Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. So today I want to do a bit of a different video looking at realistic price targets for ADA based on possible prices of Bitcoin. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like and follow us on Twitter. A lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there. So with any kind of altcoin in the crypto space, generally speaking, they're going to be heavily correlated with Bitcoin. And we can see this in this chart that I'm showing you here first very clearly, right? I've kind of lined up these log charts of the ADA price here in orange and the Bitcoin price here in blue, kind of lined them up at the March 2020 lows. And you can see just how much they tend to kind of move together. Generally speaking, when Bitcoin's doing well, ADA did well. When Bitcoin isn't doing well, ADA's not doing well either. And so one of the things that we talked about a lot on this channel is how altcoins are oftentimes very much kind of susceptible to what the broader market is doing, especially Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is doing well, kind of a rising tide lifts all boats. Bitcoin's not doing well, then kind of the opposite. Once the kind of water recedes, then all the altcoins will fall along with it. What's useful about this kind of relationship that exists is that it allows for some prediction, because you'd expect that if Bitcoin goes one way or the other, an asset like ADA will likely follow. Now, obviously, it's not going to follow perfectly, but always follow to some degree. And so that's what we're going to leverage here to see what are some realistic price targets for ADA based on different possible prices that Bitcoin could move to. So the way I'm going to do this is I just put together a very simple logarithmic regression model where I took basically only data from the beginning of 2021 onward, essentially the idea being that data within the last year and a half is probably the most reasonable to predict outcomes in the near future, right? The way that ADA related to Bitcoin all the way back in 2018 is probably less similar to how ADA is going to relate to Bitcoin, now. And so taking just the last kind of year and a half, that's probably more close to the actual relationship between the two assets now than taking data from all the way back then. So that's why I chose to do that. Obviously, that's a choice. People could choose to make this model differently. That's just the way that I did it. And so we just build this nice little model. And so we'll have an intercept, which is just kind of an offset value. And then we have the actual prediction of the Bitcoin price. So basically what I did is I just took the log base 10 of Bitcoin price, and I'm predicting the log base 10 of the ADA price. So this beta here, this B, the way you interpret this is that this is basically for every factor of 10 that Bitcoin's price moves, there will be a 1.34 factor of 10 move in ADA. That's the way that you interpret this. P-value here just suggests that this seems to be a meaningful effect. That it's unlikely to just be, really technically what this means is that if there was actually no relation between Bitcoin's price and ADA, this is the probability that we would have observed a beta this high. And it's a very low probability, so it just suggests that it's meaningful. And then the R squared of the whole model. R squared is a metric that tries to get at basically how much of the variance in this case, ADA's price is being explained by the model. And, it's not total, right? This isn't 100%. I mean, it's usually almost impossible to get to 100% with R squared, but it's not unreasonable, 0.5. So roughly half of the variance in ADA's price is being explained by Bitcoin is kind of the way that you can interpret that. At least that's what this would suggest. Okay, so that's kind of getting out the method, kind of the way that we're going to be doing these estimations. Let's move into the actual estimations themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a hypothetical Bitcoin price and then show what the model would predict ADA's price to be. So the first one I'm going to show is just kind of just to make sure we're not totally off base here with this model. It's kind of the more or less what the current Bitcoin price is, trying to predict what the current ADA price is. And it's actually very close. ADA is currently trading right around 46 cents and Bitcoin's currently trading around 21.5K. So you can see this model is not completely crazy, right? That at current Bitcoin price level, it will predict an ADA price level that's roughly around the same level. So you might even kind of interpret this as saying that ADA is right around its kind of quote unquote fair value based on the Bitcoin price currently, at least according to the model's estimation. But now let's look at some scenarios, and let's look at the bearish scenarios first, and then the bullish scenarios and how ADA's price would be expected to react. So one price level I've seen a lot of people talk about, a lot of people who have a more bearish outlook on Bitcoin, saying a level that they expect Bitcoin to reach in the not too distant future is 13K. They think we're going to fall out of this current level. We're going to fall decisively below the 17K or 17.5K, that ballpark where the low for Bitcoin was back in June, and we're going to go all the way down to 13K. So what would happen to ADA's price if that happens? Well, we can see that that the model estimates it would fall to around 23 cents. So around about a 50% drawdown from current prices should Bitcoin fall to 13K. So not great, but not absolutely horrible either. ADA had fallen pretty low back there in June as well. So just based purely on its relationship to Bitcoin, we would just be going back to kind of the 20-cent level. So not something that ADA bulls would want to have happen, but it's not zero by any means. Now, some other people talk about 6K as being more their target for Bitcoin going forward, and some people call that the worst case scenario. I think it's obviously hard to really know, but that's kind of a level that has been talked about as being kind of the next leg down. Now, if 13K, that ballpark would break, 6K would be the next level people would watch. And we see this model would actually predict ADA fall all the way back down to 8 cents. So pretty brutal. I mean, not all-time lows, but pretty darn low. Not something that I think most people would like to see. But of course, for anyone who's long-term bullish on ADA, you could reframe it as just being a fantastic buying opportunity. But these are some, what I would consider realistic price targets for ADA, depending on what Bitcoin does. And if Bitcoin kind of is this barometer of overall crypto market health, then these are just kind of things that you might expect, that if Bitcoin were to follow these levels, then ADA's price might fall to these associated predicted levels, assuming that the relationship between Bitcoin and ADA remains relatively consistent to what we've seen over from the past year and a half. And now we'll start looking at more bullish scenarios and what might happen to ADA's price. So if Bitcoin rallied up to 30K, we'd expect to see a 71-cent ADA. So not quite 100% move back up on ADA, but not bad. Pretty decent move back to the upside should that happen. We saw 40K Bitcoin, or excuse me, 45K Bitcoin. We see ADA break back over $1 to $1.23 is what the model would predict here. And then if Bitcoin were to go and reestablish its all-time high, so around 69K, the model will expect ADA to be able to go back up to $2.18. Now, one of the things that's interesting, I think, about this last one is that the model would not expect ADA to revisit its all-time high, all-time high when Bitcoin would be revisiting its all-time high, which is interesting. It's notable. And it might just suggest that really when ADA rallied all the way up to $3, it was on that big hype wave, leading up into the release of smart contracts. And it's not something that maybe would have been expected just purely on its relationship with Bitcoin. So for ADA to reestablish its all-time high, this model thinks that either Bitcoin would have to break its all-time high or ADA might have to have its own bullish catalyst to really send it off to the upside, which is totally possible, right? This is just purely only accounting for Bitcoin's price. This is not accounting for anything about possible bullish catalysts. But just interesting to note that these are the kind of price levels we would expect based on Bitcoin's price level. So I think this exercise has some utility, right? Because when you're looking at an asset, we know that it's correlated with Bitcoin, but it's kind of hard to know what to expect if Bitcoin were to go into different levels. So I think this is just a useful exercise to kind of orient ourselves. That if we see Bitcoin go back to its all-time high, just merely on ADA's relation to Bitcoin, we'd expect it to get back to $2.18. And then any bullish developments within ADA itself might just be gravy on top. And then the opposite would also, of course, be true, that if Bitcoin were to fall to 6K, we expect ADA to go down to 8 cents, barring any kind of bearish developments with ADA, which could actually push the price lower. And then, of course, if there were bullish developments in ADA, maybe it wouldn't have to fall that far. So really, this is kind of what I see as maybe the baseline, kind of based on market conditions, using Bitcoin as a proxy for market conditions. And then any kind of catalyst in one way or the other would be what might push ADA up or down relative to that, unless there's some more other fundamental reason why ADA would decouple from Bitcoin's price, that's separate from that. All right, so that's what I wanted to put out there, was just that this is, I just think, an interesting exercise to kind of orient ourselves to where ADA might go depending on where Bitcoin goes. So if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. A lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there.